Hello and welcome to the campus of San Jose State University and this edition of Equal Time. I'm your host, Journalism School Director Bob Rucker. California continues in a severe drought emergency. Water is running low. We'll show you ways you can help and what the government is doing to support the effort on this episode of Equal Time. Lawns are turning brown, reservoir levels are dropping, and rainfall is few and far between. Even if the drought comes to an end, water conservation will continue to be a concern in California. Equal Time correspondent Jessica Mundy begins our coverage with a look at the problem.
The state of California has been in a severe drought for several years and has been under a state of emergency declared by Governor Jerry Brown in January of 2014. Lack of rain, only 44% of the seasonal average during these dry years. Here in Santa Clara County, most of the water is imported. Half coming from the Delta's aqueducts carrying water from snow and rainfall in the Sierras, the other half from water pumped out of the ground.
Most of our water, and most people don't know this, most of our water actually comes from outside of the county. So about 55% of it actually comes from outside of the county. Most of it comes from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta.
California is estimated to have used 81,000 acre-feet of groundwater storage in 2014. That's enough for 81,000 suburban households in 1 year. Most of our water goes to agriculture, with only a small percentage for urban use.
If you look at one droplet of water, let's imagine that droplet is the entire droplet of water that drops in the state of California. Half of that droplet is going to basically be flushed back out into the water system. So we don't have any uses for that. They call that environmental use. So the environment benefits from that. The other half of the droplet, 40% of that droplet goes to the farms, agriculture. And then the remaining 10% go to cities and industries.
Some professionals say that agriculture receiving that much water may be too much. The average person uses 80 to 100 gallons of water per day. About half of this use is inside and half is outside. It takes 3 gallons to flush a toilet, 5 gallons to brush your teeth, and 40 gallons for a 10-minute shower. Outdoor watering uses 2 gallons per minute. But keeping the water is the challenge. The state reservoirs are at 40% of their total capacity.
Lexington Reservoir is one of the closest to Santa Clara County and is only at roughly 15% of its total capacity. Other state reservoirs and bodies of water show similar statistics. Even if this drought improves, water officials say that conservation should still be on the mind of every Californian.
When we come back, we'll look at what's happening to combat the diminishing water supply and what you can do to help the effort. Welcome back. We've seen how the drought is affecting the state of California and how the issues with water shortage can be a lasting problem. Some practical steps are being taken by the government, Silicon Valley water officials, and even here at San Jose State University. Jessica Mundy continues with solutions on this issue.
The San Jose Water Company has set a goal to reduce water usage by 30% in 2015 and has made progress across the valley. The government began offering rebates for things like high-efficiency toilets, clothes washers, and outdoor irrigation. The county has also began using recycled water.
The Santa Clara Valley Water District is looking to really triple the capacity of the recycled water supply.
The Silicon Valley Water Purification Center has recycled more than 2 million gallons of water since March of 2014. San Jose State has made progress in reducing the amount of water our campus uses as well. The campus has converted 400 fixtures that use 80% less water. This has saved 2 million gallons of water per year. San Jose State has also installed drought-resistant plants that not only use less water, but also have a very high tolerancy of recycled water. The interim president told SJSU students a little about that.
The whole recycled water system. So when you see, for example, a new wellness center and the vegetation that was put in outside it, that's all being watered with recycled waters.
Other uses of recycled water on campus is the central cooling plant tower.
Conservation measures in the 90s when recycled water became available in the city of San Jose, and started with the conversion of the campus central plant cooling tower.
The campus fountains have been brought into the water conservation effort as well.
You'll notice on campus that we have turned off all of our fountains for the public displays of water usage.
Some of the ways everyday people can make a difference is by turning off the water when brushing your teeth and getting low-flow shower heads. Every drop's safe for a rainy day, especially if that rainy day doesn't come.
When we come back, we'll sit down with environmental professors and water conservation specialists looking at ways we can be involved with recycled water. Stay with us. Welcome back to this edition of Equal Time. Today our focus is on water conservation. Let's get an update and what's being done. Let's meet our guests.
My name is Pat Ferraro. I'm a lecturer in the Environmental Studies Department, a graduate of San Jose State from 1970, and I was also on the Santa Clara Valley Water District Board for about 23 years.
I'm Bruce Olszewski. I'm also with the faculty at San Jose State University in the Environmental Studies Department.
Jerry De La Piedra from the Santa Clara Valley Water District. I manage our long-term water supply planning and conservation group.
Hussein Ashraf, I've been working with Santa Clara Water District. I'm responsible for recycling and purified water program.
I'm Jessica Monday. I am the student correspondent for this episode of Equal Time.
We thank you all for being here. And you know, the audience knows that for months we've been talking about El Nino, the water is going to get better, we're going to have a winter of this or that or the other. The bottom line, though, is conservation. What have we done? What are we doing? And are we doing it well? Do we have the sustainability and the public understanding to actually get something done effectively as we get through this drought? What would be your thoughts?
Well, I would say the public has responded very well to the current drought. We're in a 4-year drought right now. We don't know how long the drought's going to last. We know El Nino's coming, but we don't know if it's going to be enough to get us out of the drought. It may take 1 year, it may take 2 years, it may take 3 years. And so over the last couple of years, the district board, the Santa Clara Valley Water District Board of Directors has been calling for short-term reductions to reduce demands during the drought so that our water supplies or reserves will last as long as possible. And the community has really responded in 2015. We called for a 30% reduction in water use, and so far the community has saved, or in 2015 the community saved about 26-27%. So almost reached that target, which has really reduced our demands.
That's kind of surprising maybe to the public. I know people in my neighborhoods always say to me, Pat, getting people to stop using water is not the easiest thing in the world because we've been used to it since we were children.
Well, it's been cheap, it's been plentiful, and we've designed landscapes that use a lot of water. About half of our water goes on the ground outside. So, that's been the main focus of trying to get people to use less water, is basically start thinking about the climate you live in and put in appropriate landscapes to go with this climate.
And let's talk about after we get back to a level where we're satisfied down the road, years down the road, should we be maintaining these conservation efforts as responsible behavior?
Absolutely, absolutely, and there's no reason to go back to those old habits. We live in a semi-arid area, and our landscaping should reflect that, and not some fantasy thing from the Wizard of Oz, where we live in this green world. It doesn't have to be green lawns everywhere. I mean, green lawns have their place for activities, for sports, for recreation and parks, but we don't need to completely landscape our homes with green grass and use 100 million gallons of water a day to irrigate that.
And see, that seems like something that people have started to move in the right direction. And will it become sustainable? What do you think?
I think it's going to be sustainable if we continue doing what we have been doing so far. So in terms of conservation. But I want to add to what Jerry said actually, is we need to continue doing the conservation, not only because of drought, because of what's happening in the whole environment here. The climate change is there, and also the population is going to increase. There's no other water we can bring in. There's so much, as you heard, in entire world they need water, and California is not the exception. And we need to save water and we need to create water. I'm going to talk about recycled water that is some sort of helping conservation because we're conserving by recycling what we already have. And we need to do that as well because even we conserve, we have really aggressive conservation programs. If we do all, and still we need to actually do recycling and other water supply that's gonna making our needs for tomorrow.
Jerry wants to.
Yeah, I was going to say, that, I think that's a really good point. We look out 20, 30 years and how much growth there's going to be in the county, population, economy, businesses. And we look at what our supplies are going to be over that time period, and we found that there's a gap between supplies and demands. There's not enough supplies to meet demands, and so we look at how do we close that gap? How do we have a reliable water supply so we can continue to grow? And the two things that always come up are water conservation is typically the most cost-effective way to have a reliable water supply. But as Hossein mentioned, that's still not enough. We need to do more. And so we're looking to also accelerate our purified water, recycled water program.
But Bruce, when you're dealing with students and you're trying to get the next generation to understand the importance of prioritizing this, does it sink in quickly or do you have to make a long-term appeal about this concept?
Oh, I think students get it, and one of the things that we're trying to do in the university is, we're teaching students to become leaders, and so they get into industry. They work for government agencies, local, state, federal, and many people have been really quite effective. We've looked at actually students have been working on things that as professionals that reduced our water consumption by changing some of the rules and regulations and ordinances that we have around the entire state. So, shower heads that are manufactured now use much less water than they used to. Toilets that are manufactured use much less water. We have local ordinances that reduce or limit the amount of water that can be used on landscape. So, we've been reducing the amount of grass area, including more things like indigenous plants that use less water. So, they've been working, understanding their role in institutionalizing long-term, sustainable, efficient use of water.
Well, Jessica can certainly speak to that. You've done a lot of research about this, and you were telling me earlier that this concept of purified water, we need to talk about that.
Yes, purified water is, I just learned the other day that we actually use recycled water on our campus and for a lot of things like irrigation and indoor plumbing. And one of the things that I also learned while I was researching all of this is that recycled water and purified water are very, very similar. And I think you guys would be able to talk more about the chemical balance of that, but that there's a lot of contention when it comes to is recycled water safe and is purified water any different than that?
Recycled water is what currently being using here for, as mentioned, in irrigation and cooling towers and some other processing. However, the quality is good for irrigation and cooling tower, but we think that we have to be much better quality in order to make it drinkable and be potable water. So it goes through a very advanced treatment process, which is microfiltration, reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis is the heart of this. Is really something like you're using for the under sink you're in a kitchen. It just get everything out of it. So just all the salt, everything out. It's pure water. And then afterwards we use some disinfection, UV and advanced oxidation. For that water, if you put it in the pipeline, it's gonna eat the pipeline because of so much pure. But so we have to condition that water to put it back into the nature. That we usually what we are planning to do, put it in the pond in order to recharge groundwater with, so the people can use it later on. But it can be also used in the future. There's no regulation yet. It can be used just pipe to pipe. You just drink that water. As a matter of fact, we built a treatment plant as a demo at we call it Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. It's a huge state-of-the-art treatment plant that's the largest in Northern California. That's the people come and visit that, and they drink that water afterwards. Once some of the people, they cannot believe this. What is the source of this water? It has been treated 3 times before getting to us, and then we treat it much more in advance. As I said, go through the treatment plant, and then once you see it, it's so good and the taste is good. I have been drinking it and I've been happy for it. So,
do people ever express some skepticism though that the more you treat water, the more it might be dangerous for the human body? Do you hear that in class, or do you hear that from your students?
Yeah, I do. There's a concern about, are all the pharmaceuticals taken out? There was a report recently about the amount of pharmaceuticals that people consume. Well over half of Americans are taking some kind of daily pharmaceutical. So all this stuff is going to go through our wastewater treatment plants. They want to be assured that all this stuff is being removed. So there's a role for independent testing, something outside of the water district that can help generate some trust.
Absolutely. I remember doctors and hospitals over the last 20 years talking about don't flush down the toilet,
That's
pills and medications and all that, because that can be part of the issue for the water?
Yeah, well, what's really good news is that the County of Santa Clara has been working with other city agencies to actually create a pharmaceutical take-back program, and it's gone through the court system, and basically it's, what the courts have said is that cities have that right. They can regulate this, and they can require pharmaceutical take-back. So we'll be seeing that soon.
Very good.
Oh, Bob, let me jump
Sure.
in here. That piece about throwing unused pills in the toilet is such a tiny percentage of the pharmaceuticals that are produced and prescribed to patients. 99% of it goes right through our human body. The body doesn't metabolize a lot of that. So we excrete most of the pharmaceuticals that are in the wastewater. They're not from dumping pills.
Interesting.
So it's kind of an issue that raises the awareness of these pharmaceuticals flowing into the water supply, basically, because we're going to reuse that water. But the fact is, we've got the technology that can remove every single bit of that. The pharmaceutical compounds cannot fit through the reverse osmosis filters that we use at these water purification plants. So it's really not an issue in terms of what we produce, but the issue about the flow of pharmaceuticals is an issue. And we've worked with the medical associations committees here lately, and they are actually appealing to the pharmaceutical industry to make drugs so they're better metabolized. And that's where the source control is in terms of how you manufacture these drugs and how the body metabolizes rather than pass through the residual into the water.
See, this is why you have to have professors on television. That was very reassuring.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. But let's talk about...
I just want to add something with what Pat said. So
Sure.
actually, I agree with he said 100%. And I want to make sure that the audience understand that we can treat that. It's not like we cannot treat it. What Pat's saying is actually we need to be careful of what we put it in there, so we don't have to do more energy consumption and more work to take it out. So the better water that we receive, we can treat it easily and less cost effective. So that's more cost effective actually to get that water to the public.
All right,
That's a good point, because the first step in really anything environmental is to not create a problem in the first place.
Prevention.
So it's great to always
Yes.
reduce the scope of the problem. Then you can spend less money, less time, less energy, less staff time, fewer tax dollars on eliminating a problem. And it's better just simply don't create it.
And then people at home, I think, would appreciate that as well. Let's talk about what we can do now as viewers to conserve water, to catch water. What should we be thinking as we go through the winter, as we get into the next summer?
Well, there's always easy things that you can start with. There's taking shorter showers, changing your irrigation throughout the year, checking your irrigation system. As Pat mentioned, over half of your water use goes into outdoor irrigation. So reducing that as much as you can will make a big impact on the overall water use. Having more efficient appliances, toilets, washing machines, shower heads, faucet aerators, dishwashers. And then there's also, the Water District has various programs where we can assist. We have publications, we have outreach, we have workshops, we have incentive programs, we have a free Waterwise house call program where we'll go to a person's home and do a thorough evaluation of everywhere they use water, indoor and outdoors, and show them how they can make some savings or make some changes to save water.
And what about saving rainwater? How can we be a part of that?
Saving rainwater, you can buy rain barrels. Rain barrels are relatively cheap. Put them out in your yard and collect the rainwater, and then use it to irrigate your landscape. There's also gray water is another good program that's catching on right now, and a basic one is to use your rinse water from your washing machine and divert that out in your landscape and use that to irrigate your landscape.
Now, is that a major undertaking to try to
Well,
recapture?
those last two things Jerry talked about are really kind of a suite that really need to go together. You know the rainfall pattern here. We go 8 months without rainfall. It's hard to imagine storing enough rainwater to get us through those 8 dry months. But we have that gray water coming out of our homes every single week as we do our laundry, as we wash our dishes. Well, you're not supposed to use dishwater. So that goes down the sewer. But you know the rest of the water that I rinse my clothes, I up my dishes off. I do take that out to the yard, and it's kept a lot of my perennial plants alive around my home this year.
And Jessica's been looking into this. Any other thoughts, questions for our guests?
I would really like to talk about, I know when I was speaking to Pat earlier this semester, we talked about your video that you made about how water is like a spaceship, and I was wondering if you'd be able to talk about that today.
Well, that's just it. We're in a closed environment here, and there's all the water that's on the planet is all we're ever going to get. And so, we're kind of in this loop. Nature has a hydrologic cycle. It loops that water, but climate's changing, and we don't have the reliability to know that the past hydrology is going to be our future hydrology. So this is why we've got to move into the direction of first being more efficient with the water we use, and then recycling the water that we've already got and making the best use of that. And we can do that at home, or we can do that in a community-wide system.
And we stopped talking about desalinization. We're close to the ocean. Why aren't we talking more about that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, we've looked into desalination. We're actually part of a pilot study with other Bay Area water agencies to see, if it makes sense in terms of long-term planning, long-term water supply reliability. And what we've found so far, and things change over time, but what we've found so far is conservation and recycled water are more cost-effective for us to meet our long-term demands. Now, as things change, prices change, costs go down, improvement in technology and things like that, that may shift over time. But right now, we're really focused on water conservation and recycled water.
Yeah,
As
it's
Jerry
something-
mentioned, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and something that's often overlooked, people look at, the oceans and see all this water and think desalinization is a solution, but the reality is that happens at sea level. So whenever you have to apply significant amounts of energy just to make fresh water, and then it has to be pumped upstream to where people are. So it's a significant energy use. And despite all the talk about renewable energy, that's probably not going to be the major source of energy to do that. Perhaps in the future, but it's a significant issue, particularly when we're dealing with climate change that is with us now.
I've been hearing this question a lot. My neighbors ask me, so we are next to the ocean, why we are not using the desal? The answer is actually, if you look at what we already have, conservation is one way to do more water available for future. And then also recycle water. Recycled water salt is around 700 to 800, which is we call it TDS, total dissolved solid, parts per million. And then if you look at the ocean, it's 35,000. So you know how much energy you have to spend on just getting that salt out. So it makes sense to go with recycled water first, purify that water, and use it for drinking, and go to the next step that maybe in the future we have to go to desal. Until then we need to make conservation, recycle water, and then desal.
If we're going to talk about water supply, I think what many people don't understand is that in California, 80% of the water is being used by agriculture, and much of that goes to very inexpensive, high water use crops, things like alfalfa. If you look at the information that's available from the Department of Water Resources, we use more water on alfalfa than all of Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, San Jose times 2. So what that means is that if we're going to be talking about water supply, the first thing we really ought to be looking at is the efficient use of water in agriculture, because much of that water could come to cities. And agriculture, despite its importance, is only 2-3% of the state economy. So, one might ask, why is something that generates 2 to 3% of the economy getting 80% of the water?
Well, it's so we don't have to spend $150 a pound for cheese, because the alfalfa has value added to it as we feed it to the cows, and the cows make the milk and go to the cheese. So,
Which then leads to heart disease and
it
other
absolutely
health
does.
problems.
You should stop eating cheese. Everyone stop eating cheese. But the problem with the low value crops is that because it's such a low value, they can't afford to use the water efficiently. When you got almonds or strawberries, you can afford to pressurize your water system and put it through drip irrigation, which minimizes the amount of water, puts just the water that the crop needs right at the root zone. But those are high-value crops, so they can afford those capital costs to increase the efficiency. The farmers who grow alfalfa can't do that. And because it just doesn't have the high value to pay off those efficiency things. So it's like, well, if we don't have the water in California to grow the low value crops, maybe they need to be grown someplace where there is more water. But
Yeah.
the West has got this problem kind of universally of being water short. So
But agribusiness is going to probably push back and say, you know, we can't just cut back the water supply to agriculture, because if we do that, we're going to hurt the nation.
Right. Well, we're gonna certainly change the price of food.
Right.
And you know, the price of corn started to go up during Ronald Reagan's administration, and so he put price guarantees on corn. So rather than putting corn in silos until the price went up, the farmers just planted the whole Midwest in corn because they had a guaranteed market. And it just shifted agriculture completely when one administration did that by putting a price guarantee on one commodity.
Yeah, I
so
think
you can kind of spread that out to the other commodities and see the problem.
And we're almost out of time, but I just want to go back to my correspondent and say, so now young people have to worry about water use. We have to worry about water use. Everybody has to worry about water use. It's part of being a responsible citizen in this day and age. I'm afraid we're just too much out of time. So
Sorry.
thank you all. This was a great conversation. I think
you.
you got the cheese people thinking on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
as
yeah.
well. I really love that. So we thank you for joining us, and we thank you. We hope you'll come back for another edition of Equal Time.